the galaxy. Oh, he's with us now.
Good
Very
one.
good. Namaste.
Namaste. So
So,
sorry we are delayed with our sharings in the previous session.
yeah.
I had to leave them without, so they have to finish without me.
So, Mother has made her soul the body of our state. Well, obviously, when the Supreme comes down to earth, it's a holocaust. It's a painful one at times. Birth is not easy. Most children, when they're born, come out of the womb with a cry. It's so the great world mother has accepted our sorrow and our unconsciousness, and even this lapse of divinity from its own splendors wove the many patterned ground of all we are. So let's read those lines once, go through them. The great world mother, by her sacrifice, has made her soul the body of our state. Accepting sorrow and unconsciousness, divinity's lapse from its own splendors wove the many patterned ground of all we are. See, if we read it again and again, the same lines again and again, the mantra will enter our bodies. It will enter our physical consciousness and our psychic being and our subtle consciousness. So now we have read it once, we have looked at it a moment, and now we begin to understand, oh, yes, this is what Mother did. She came down to us and she entered into the body of our state. And this is what Nolinida told me. She has put a part of herself into each of us, truly. So he said, we think we are different bodies. We are not. We are all her body. She has put a part of herself into each of us. If we can understand this, if we can truly understand this, then we will understand that there must be harmony, there must be peace amongst her children. So, what happens now? Well, what he's going to tell us now is a very powerful thing. An idol of self, it's our mortality. An idol of self is our mortality. Well, yes, it's an image of self, this mortality. And our earth is even a fragment and a residue. Well, it's certainly a residue because we came from other worlds. We came from greater heights. We came from the resting place of the soul where we have been maybe 1,000 times. Can you imagine that? I don't think that we've had less than 1,000 births to be able to come here at this time on the earth and be available and even ready for the transformation. At least the progress towards that transformation in our consciousness. So Sri Aurobindo tells us next that our earth is a fragment and a residue. Her power is packed with the stuff of greater worlds. Yes, of course, Mother's power is in all the worlds. She is the divine creatrix, and therefore her power is unlimited. Now we have the next line, and steeped in their color lusters, dimmed by her drowse. Well, this is a difficult line. There's no doubt. because the next line is going to tell us more about this um, emergence into matter and into earth, and an atavism of higher births is hers. Now, atavism generally means a reversion to an earlier type. Well, my goodness, yes, uh, the earlier type is Mother's supreme being. And so, yes, this is a reversion of higher births is the mother's, and her sleep is stirred by their buried memories, recalling the lost spheres from which they fell. Oh, so recalling those fears. And many of us recall certain things also. We can recall earlier births. We can recall friendships from long back in other births. Two people meet each other and they know immediately, this is my answering soul. This is my life's companion. It happens. And so we see now that unsatisfied forces move in the Divine Mother's bosom. Well, they're unsatisfied because they're not perfected as yet. None of us are perfected as yet. But there's a semicolon after that word, move, because they are partners of her mother's greater growing fate and her return to immortality. Another semicolon, interesting, two semicolons within three lines. And then another semicolon. They consent to share her doom of birth and death. They kindle partial gleams of the all and drive her blind, laborious spirit to compose a meager image of the mighty whole. Well, this has been true for centuries and centuries. And we have previously discussed that in all the millennia of the birth of this world, of this earth, um, perhaps 95 or 99% is prior to humanity. We are a little speck in that time frame, but we are a divine speck because the divine is within us. And so we are partners of the Divine Mother's growing fate and her return to immortality, which is promised to us also by Sri Aurobindo. Says that all who have come to him are destined for the supramental. Now, we come to him in different ways. We can come to him mentally. We can come to him through the heart, through the inner being. We can come to him through various yogas, hatha yogas, raja yogas, but the integral yoga is the key to everything. And we have to read Sri Aurobindo and Mother to really begin to understand what they have brought down in this present evolution. They kindle partial gleams of the all and drive her blind, laborious spirit to compose a meager image of the mighty whole. Well, you see, when the divine manifests here on earth, he's come down from these lost spheres, those spheres of, we can say, paradise or heavenly abode. And they make this holocaust of the Supreme to be able to come down at various points of the world's evolution. So we have a Christ coming, we have a Krishna coming. Now we have the dual avatars. And that is the most important because as we read Savitri, we realize that Sri Aurobindo or Ashwapati, speaking of Ashwapati, uh, has become an avatar, has realized everything, and yet he knows within himself that he cannot bring down the supramental alone. And that's when we get to the other book of the Divine Mother, where he asks her to bring down someone who will change this earthly life to a life divine. And that is Savitri, who is an emanation of the Divine Mother. Savitri is not the Divine Mother totally. The Divine Mother is beyond all description, all imagination. So we're going to find out now some things. First of all, these partial gleams, these brief flashes of light, these indications, these traces. Her blind, laborious. Laborious is something that involves long, hard work. And Aurobindo Basu used to say to me, it's hard, slogging discipline, this yoga. It needs that discipline. But there is a sunlit path. And that sunlit path is open to everyone. But we have to rein in this difficult mind, which sees things always in duality. I've spoken of it so many times, good and bad, truth and falsehood, high and low, life and death. We can go on and on. And unless we can see this mighty whole, notice that he capitalizes the W, this mighty whole. But right now, it's a meager image. We're not there yet. Sri Aurobindo calls us a transitional being. Let's look a little bit more now. The calm and luminous intimacy within approves her work and guides the unseeing power. Well, that calm and luminous intimacy, many of us have already felt when we've met the mother, either when she was in her body or after she left her body. Many of us have met her. We have seen her. We have visited with her, different worlds, different experiences. Now that she's universal in her work, as I said to others, she's available always to everyone. There are no longer any secret societies. They may think they are, the Illuminatis and the Masons. They may think they are, but they're not, because the supramental is here and it's available at every moment to every soul. The calm and luminous intimacy within approves her work and guides the unseeing power. Well, the unseen power is the strength and force of the Shakti. And in the creation, the universal nature does work to evolve. We see her evolving in all kinds of ways. And for me personally, in horticulture, I see so much beauty being created by her. But she's not always an unseeing power. She plays around and experiments with things. But then Sri Aurobindo tells us his vast design. Now, this is the Purusha, his vast design accepts a puny start. The word puny here is very interesting. It's something we often used pejoratively amongst our friends and say, "Oh, you're puny, you're weak." It simply means to be weak. So the vast design of the divine is certainly not finished as yet. Even after the supramental is fully active on the earth, Mother said there is no end to evolution. This is so interesting because she says after that we enter these worlds of Sat Chit Ananda, and there's no end there. But the supramental is going to change everything on the earth. And that we can be sure of because Mother said there will be no seventh pralaya. There have been 6 times that the earth has been destroyed. We hear of Lemuria, we hear of Atlantis and these other 4. But this time, no, not even nuclear bombs will touch this earth. There will be no major conflagration. Aurobindo Basu told me there will continue to be small wars, but there will never be any nuclear disaster. You can take that from a great yogi and from Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Now Sri Aurobindo is going to tell us this beautiful, beautiful sentences. An attempt, a drawing half done, is the world's life. Its curves join not their high intended close, yet some first image of greatness trembles there. And when the ambiguous crowded parts have met what? The many-toned unity to which they moved. The artist's joy shall laugh at reason's rules. Semicolon. The divine intention suddenly shall be seen. The end vindicate intuition's sure technique. Well, we can all agree that an attempt and a drawing half done is this world's life. Look at it right now. It seems that darkness has the upper hand, but it never does. That's just as we see it. It's a false seeing, actually. The light and the force is everywhere. And Mother said to my good friend Dimitri, and the world is so small. The light is everywhere, the force is everywhere, and the world is so small. So its lines doubt their concealed significance. And doubt is a major problem with humanity. We doubt ourselves, we doubt our countries, we doubt even the divine at times. And these curves, so the lines doubt their significance, the curves don't join their high intended close. Yet some first image of greatness trembles there. And that first image of greatness we can see when we are truly in the arms of divine love, the mother's love. And when the ambiguous, crowded parts have met, the many-toned unity to which they moved, and we're all moving towards that unity, the artist's joy shall laugh at reason's rules. The divine intention suddenly shall be seen. The end vindicate. Vindicate is to provide justification for something. Vindicate intuition's sure technique. Now, it's been quite some time since I've asked anyone to read. So, could I ask maybe Natalie? Could you read what we've just gone through? And let's try to do that every week, that we can all share some lines and read them as we're beginning to feel them within our inner being. Okay.
Right, but where shall I start?
Yes, please.
Where? The calm and luminous here?
No, I think we can begin an atavism of higher births.
Okay. Oh, okay. An atavism of higher birth is hers. Her sleep is stirred by their buried memories, recalling the lost spheres from which they fell. Unsatisfied forces in her bosom move. They are partners of her greater growing fate and her return to immortality. They consent to share her doom of birth and death. They kindle partial gleams of the all and drive her blind, laborious spirit to compose a meager image of the mighty whole. The calm and luminous intimacy within approves her work and guides the unseen power. His vast design accepts the puny start. An attempt, a drawing half done is the world's life. Its lines doubt their concealed significance. Its curves join not their high intended close. Yet some first image of greatness trembles there. And when the ambiguous crowded parts have met, the many-toned unity to which they moved, the artist's joy shall laugh at reason's rules. The divine intention suddenly shall be seen. The end vindicates intuition's sure technique.
Vladimir, shall you give us some insights from the Vedas?
Well, that is something which is coming all the time to mind when there's the calm and luminous intimacy within approves her work and guides the unseeing power. This calm and luminous intimacy within the nature, which is, so to say, trying to create this image, this approximate image of mighty whole, to bring all things together, all ends, to connect all dots. That intimacy within is Purusha's attention, is the spirit within which permits her to experiment and to go on, because she is unseeing power. She cannot see, but he within gives her, so to say, permission to go ahead. And she knows somehow, feels of, has faith somewhere within, because he's there within with his intimacy, and that she will always find a way. And all our approximation, all this, that the ends do not meet, all these doubts which are corroding this kind of faith or corroding that intimacy. It's not yet manifested in outside in the power, but slowly it gets manifested and slowly it comes um, to the end which is intended. It's a beautiful, very psychological state of being searching for knowledge and searching for the fulfillment in life.
So, Vladimir, is that why it says over here, her blind, laborious spirit? Is that somehow connected to the unseen power?
Yes, yeah, yes. So the power and knowledge are somehow disconnected, yeah? And the power is below, as it were, knowledge is above, and they have to meet. They got disconnected. The more powerful world, the stone is very powerful, yes. But the higher we rise, the less power we have, as it were. But to bring them together, to fulfill the power with knowledge, is the aim of this evolution. So they have to come together. That intimacy within gives her the right to go ahead. This is a very Vedic vision of. And before was so beautiful with this, with the Divine Mother, the Great World Mother, by her sacrifice. This is so profound. Her Holocaust of the Supreme, Holocaust of the Divine Mother. She gave herself for this world to be. To bring to birth that supreme individual he wanted to become. He wanted to be many, so she agreed to do this, and she made the sacrifice from her powers and brought him to this fall. And greater by the fall, he grows greater by the fall. Yeah? This was a beautiful presentation by Aravinda Basu before.
Yes, a God come down.
And greater by the fall, yeah.
Yes, I remember that talk. Very beautiful. How can a God come down and be greater by the fall? He explains it so beautifully. Because the divine is casting himself into millions and billions of forms in his experiment to realize other aspects of himself. And yet, the Divine Mother has to come down, and it is a Holocaust. I'll continue with a few more lines because there's a little confusion here about this graph. A graph shall be of many meeting worlds, a cube and union crystal of the gods. Now, this union crystal is a hyphenated word, so we have to take it as one word. I talked to Alok about it at length, and he felt it is the perfection of form and qualities, a higher perfection. Shruti, whom I met and talked with quite a bit about this, has written something, and I will share that with you. She says it's the symbolic representation of the metaphysical ascending layers of creation, the mystical Sri Yantra, the symbol of creation, the symbol of diamonds and triangles leading to a single point at the top and encompassed in a square. If you look at it from above airily, it appears to be this symbol from a flat perspective. But if you look at it from the side, it is an ascending mountain called Mount Meru, but actually like the Sri Yantra. Very interesting. So a cube and union crystal of the gods, semicolon. A mind shall think behind nature's mindless mask. Well, that sounds to be almost two terms in opposition, but they're not, because a mind, Sri Aurobindo capitalizes mind, and he capitalizes nature. Now, it's because nature doesn't have the mental capacity. So a mind is going to think behind this mindless mask of nature. Nature just creates. She's always creating, but she doesn't create mentally. Now, what does he say next? It's very, very important. A conscious vast fill the old dumb brute space. That's the vastness, capital V, vast. The almost the transcendental, we should say, or at least the cosmic. This faint and fluid sketch of soul called man shall stand out on the background of long time, a glowing epitome of eternity. A little point reveal the infinitudes. Now, I think next week we'll begin with a mysteries process is the universe, because that's a passage that we have to read again and again. But let us go through these through these few lines. So there's going to be a graph, a joining of these many meeting worlds. Now, notice that Sri Aurobindo has said worlds, plural. So we know that there are other worlds. We know that the gods live in fixed worlds, and those fixed worlds, each one has its own power. But they cannot evolve. They are fixed to that. But this cube and union crystal of the gods is very interesting. So a mind, Sri Aurobindo says, in the ordinary sense of the word, it covers indiscriminately the whole consciousness. For man is a mental being and mentalizes everything. But he tells us that there's much more. It's a consciousness that measures and limits. It's an instrument of analysis. And then he tells us that mind is divided into three parts: thinking mind, dynamic mind, externalizing mind. See, when we read Sri Aurobindo and we feel sometimes maybe that he's using so many words, that is not a correct attitude. Sri Aurobindo is using all the world's words possible to explain something that is almost inexplicable by human sense or reason. So then he tells us a conscious vast now, not an unconscious vast, something very conscious will fill this old, silent, brute space. Brute. We know what a brute is. But then he says, this faint and fluid sketch of soul called man shall stand out on the background of long time, a glowing epitome of eternity. That's a quintessence of eternity. A little point reveal the infinitudes. And we will end there. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week. Namaste.
Thank you, Narad. Namaste.
Naraji, by the background, it seems like you're back in the US. Is that right?
Yes, and I'm leaving on July 7th to live permanently in the ashram at Oregon.
Oh, beautiful.